All right, first up on today's show, we have an announcement by Representative Tulsi Gabbard, who unfortunately is on her way out in the House. She didn't run for re-election, so this January, after that, she won't be returning, and that means I'm not really optimistic that her bill is going to like get brought to the House floor or anything. Since we got less than a month till the election, no stimulus deal for COVID, which seems to be maybe the top priority for the House, and then not much is I'm guessing is expected to happen in November and December. But this bill nonetheless is being brought up, and hopefully, even if Gabbard isn't bad, somebody like Thomas Massey could pick it up and keep talking about it because it is just that important. What this bill would do is reform the Espionage Act to better protect whistleblowers. One of the things in the Espionage Act is that you're really not allowed to defend yourself based on what you did. You can't say, well, I did release all these documents, but it was to show there was massive violations to the Constitution, unethical stuff going on, whether it's mass spying or the torture at Guantanamo Bay or elsewhere around the world that the U.S. was doing. And so people like Edward Snowden are essentially forced to either show up to this court, only be able to present evidence that, either you did or did not leak the documents, not as to why you leaked the documents, and then be thrown in jail for the rest of your life. So, Will, let's talk about this a little bit. How important do you think these reforms are, if it were to get passed?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of incredible that like a similar reform has not yet been passed. That like we still have the Espionage Act in its current form, which they have used to either prosecute or to attempt to prosecute like all kinds of whistleblowers. Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers, he was charged under that. The charges were eventually dropped because the government like misconduct in investigating him. But as you mentioned, the NSA leaker Edward Snowden has been charged under the Espionage Act. Chelsea Manning, who released the Iraq and Afghan war logs, and then of course Julian Assange, who has been who's the U.S. is trying to prosecute under the Espionage Act for helping Manning to get those documents published. And this law, the Espionage Act, basically treats whistleblowers as enemy spies. Like that is what the law was designed to do, after all, is to go after people committing espionage. But that's obviously a very different and distinct kind of action from somebody who's trying to reveal secrets for the benefit of the public. That's an entirely different kind of act. And yet, under the current law, there is no distinction really. And as you're saying, they don't allow the accused to really defend themselves. They don't let them state their reasoning for releasing the classified material, and so they're barred from even talking about their intent at all. And so this new thing introduced by Gabbard is, I think, extremely important. It would be a major amendment to the Espionage Act, and it would allow for defendants to speak about their intent, what I think they call a affirmative defense. They'd allow them to give that, which would mean that people like Snowden or Assange could actually speak to the public interest element of their disclosures, should they ever, stand trial in the U.S. And God forbid that does happen. But under this reform, that would allow them to more, give them a greater ability to defend themselves. And obviously, that would change a lot about how a jury would hear the case. As under the current law, the government is basically able to paint the picture and characterize things exactly as they want without any pushback from the defendant. So I think that's kind of an insane fact that's the current law. But this bill would also make it so prosecutors would have to prove that people charged under the Espionage Act have a specific intent to cause harm to the U.S. or to like help an enemy state with their disclosure. And they would also have to show that the material that was released was properly classified. Meaning, so if it's something that like is illegal for the government to do, they actually have no right to keep that secret. And so that would also now factor into this as like whether it was properly classified. So it does quite a few interesting reforms to the Espionage Act. It also, I think, it tries to strengthen protections for publishers and journalists, and tries to make it so only people who hold a security clearance can be hit with the Espionage Act charges. So that, like, for somebody like Julian Assange, that would make a huge difference because he's being charged purely as a publisher and a journalist. Whereas for somebody like Edward Snowden, he himself, he did hold a security clearance. He was a source. He personally actually got the secrets. But nonetheless, he would still be able to defend himself a lot better under this reform. So there's a lot of things that this does that I think is extremely important. And I think we can see how important it is because people like Daniel Ellsberg have endorsed it and said that like had this been the law when he was charged, like it would have helped him a lot. So I think that says quite a bit about what this reform would do.
Yeah, I believe Edward Snowden has said that as long as he would be able to, testify as to why he did this, he would actually be willing to come and have his trial in the US. So at least from his perspective, this is something that he thinks would be important to him gain justice. The points about Julian Assange are huge, especially the security clearance thing, just because if you are a publisher, that would essentially, as long as you don't have a security clearance, like maybe in the past, and now you're publishing other works, that seems to like really be something that's going to help the publishers. You also had this interesting thing with Julian Assange, right, where he's not a citizen of the U.S., and so it's kind of curious how he could be violating the Espionage Act by publishing documents given to him by other people. But the
Right.
U.S. is claiming that he is subject to the Espionage Act, but then at the same time that he doesn't have First Amendment rights, to free speech and free press and to be able to publish and everything, because he's not an American citizen. And it's a way for the U.S. to kind of have it both ways to get who they want, and at the same time pretend like it's not impacting the Constitution. But again, this will kind of just take care of that whole problem. Will, I know I opened it up being pretty pessimistic about actually passing anything like this. Do you have any reason to think that this might get taken up, debated at all, or is it just going to be a bill that kind of sits around until Tulsi Gabbard's out of office, and then likely the incoming Congress won't pick it back up again, or if they do, it'll be somebody like Thomas Massey who doesn't have like the clout needed to get his bill brought forward in the House, and it'll just sit around again.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have any real like detailed insight into like the potential fate of the bill, but I do get the same impression that you do, a more pessimistic one, that this thing will just sort of languish. I mean, Tulsi has been able to get certain like bipartisan. I don't know if you call it a coalition, but like for example, she recently introduced a resolution with the Republican rep Matt Gaetz to call for to like drop all charges against Edward Snowden. And so I would like to see her sort of like, team up with people across the aisle and maybe get some momentum behind this thing. But so long as it's her name attached to this and there's not any other bigger names, I don't foresee, especially her fellow Democrats really like playing ball with her for this. I don't think she's very popular among a lot of her, fellow party members. So, I'm not sure how much they would stick their neck out for this.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one, but it's the real thing that's needed to make sure that the American people are able to get the truth about what their government is doing. And just a final point here that Scott Horton always brings up is the way they, are kind of acting with the Espionage Act right now. They're really, kind of saying that the American people are the enemy because that's who this information is important to. It's not that Edward Snowden took a bunch of documents to the Chinese or the Russians to say this is how America might be, intercepting different communications. It's not like Julian Assange got documents and gave them to Al Qaeda or the Taliban or whoever else to help them
Right.
understand what the Americans were doing. This was information given to the American people to understand what our government was doing so we could better, you know, regulate them and try to prevent them from doing some of the just insane mass surveillance, torture program stuff that has gone on in the past 20 years now. And again, if the American people aren't the enemy, then why are they being charged with the Espionage Act for releasing this to the American people? And the way the way Tulsi is looking to change this bill, it seems to be getting back to the original intent to the idea where if somebody is selling U.S. state secrets to a foreign power to harm the American people, then yeah, there's something wrong with that, but not if it's American citizens or other citizens of the world just publishing and leaking information about crimes committed by the American government.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is a complete abuse of what you would think something called the Espionage Act would be for, and that'd be going after espionage and not after journalists looking out for the public interest. So you'd think there would be some kind of distinction between those things, and maybe there will be if this bill has any luck. But for now, unfortunately, that is not the case.
All right, well, let's take a minute to thank our show's sponsor, Paloma Verde. Paloma Verde offers great CBD products. I've been using some of their products for the past couple of months now, and I gotta say, it's been huge, especially with this recent move I had across most of the country, Boston to Denver. That's thousands of hours in the car, or not hours, miles of driving in the car. Not having most of like my usual stuff like my bed and my comfortable chair to sit in. I gotta say, it's really been helpful with like the back pain and just I have a job where I sit and I read for hours and hours and hours every day, which means that when you're sitting on your butt that much, it's pretty easy to get some soreness and stuff like that. But I really find the CBD, especially the daily gel capsules I'm taking, are huge. And so, check that out if you're somebody who has, just like kind of chronic discomfort and back pain or something like that, or any other thing that the CBD might help you with. And if you go to palomaverdestore.com, they got this great CBD education page where they just go through and say, hey, this is how CBD could help you with different things and hopefully help you pick the right product for you. So again, palomaverdestore.com. When you shop for your CBD there, make sure you put in the promo code PEACE at checkout and you'll get 25% off your order of $75 or more. Will, let's get back to the show.